Picture this. You're standing in a grocery store, and your eyes land on a little beige bean. It's roundish, slightly lumpy, with a pointy tip. If you squint, it kind of looks like a tiny bird's head, or maybe a miniature heart. It's lighting your palm, unassuming, easy to overlook. You might walk right past it, but here's the thing. This humble little bean has been traveling with humans for roughly 8,000 years. It has fed empires, shaped cuisines, and quietly supported millions of families. And today, it's showing up in salads, snack packs, and smoothie bowls around the world. I'm talking about the chickpea. In many parts of the world today, chickpeas feel modern. You see them in trendy grain bowls, in vegan dips, in protein-packed snacks. They look like a new health food, something that arrived with the awareness era. But the truth is, chickpeas are ancient. They were among the earliest crops that humans deliberately cultivated long before the pyramids were built, long before the earliest Chinese poetry was written down. And they're still a daily staple for millions of people across South Asia, the Middle East, and the Mediterranean. So how did this little bean get so far? Let's run about 10,000 years. Archaeologists have found evidence linked to chickpea cultivation and domestication in the early Neolithic period, in what is now southeastern Turkey and northern Syria. Different sites and dating methods give different timelines, but the broad picture points to more than 8,000 years ago. At that time, humans were slowly shifting from hunting and gathering towards settled farming. And chickpeas were part of that shift of the legumes that entered our food system right at the dawn of agriculture. From there, chickpeas traveled. Eastward, they reached South Asia, where they became a cornerstone of Indian cooking. In Hindi and related languages, chickpeas are called *chana*, and the word itself carries centuries of culinary history. Westward, they moved into Mesopotamia, the Mediterranean, and North Africa. There's a famous story about the Roman statesman Cicero's family name is indeed connected to the Latin word *cicer*, which means chickpea. But the tale about his ancestor having a chickpea-shaped bump on his nose. That comes from ancient biographical traditions, so it's best treated as a colorful anecdote rather than verified history. Still, think about that. A tiny bean, woven into the fabric of language, politics, and daily meals across continents, that's not just food, that's a companion. But here's the thing, chickpeas aren't just historically interesting, they're genuinely good for you. And this is where things get a little complicated. Let's look at the numbers. For dried chickpeas, the exact values vary by variety and database, but it's not unusual to find around 20 grams of protein per 100 grams of dry weight. They also provide dietary fiber, folate, iron, phosphorus, magnesium, and several B vitamins. That's impressive. But, and this is important, we need to be careful with the word quality. Chickpea protein is valuable, but it's not identical to animal protein. Like most legumes, chickpeas are relatively lower in certain sulfur-containing amino acids, especially methionine. Grains, on the other hand, tend to be relatively lower in lysine. That's why traditional diets often pair beans with gracenut, because every single meal needs perfect precision, but because over time, a varied diet fills the gaps, and this raises a bigger question. For decades, nutrition conversations have centered on animal protein, meat, eggs, dairy. But in many parts of the world, people have long relied on plant foods like chickpeas for protein and energy. That's not a compromise. That's a reality. And it reminds us that healthy eating is about overall patterns, not worshipping one single ingredient. Now science is starting to pay serious attention to chickpeas. One area is blood sugar. Chickpeas generally have a low to moderate glycemic response, but that number shifts depending on the variety, how they're cooked, and what they're eaten with. Some studies have explored whether chickpeas help with blood sugar control, but the evidence isn't a green light for everyone with diabetes to rely on them. It's not a medicine. Another area is heart health. Some research has linked higher legume intake with better cholesterol or cardiovascular risk markers, but again, that's within the context of an overall healthy diet, not a magic bean effect. And then there's weight management. Chickpeas contain protein and fiber, which may help with satiety. Some observational studies suggest that people who eat legumes regularly tend to have healthier body weights, but that's correlation, not causation. Lifestyle matters. So here's the tension. Chickpeas are nutritious, ancient, and globally important. But they're not a cure-all. They're not a superfood in the Serpira sense. They're just really good food, and maybe that's enough. So how do you actually eat them? Well, dried chickpeas need planning. You soak them for several hours or overnight, then cook them thoroughly. It takes time, but the reward is a creamy texture and a mild, nutty flavor. If that sounds like too much work, canned chickpeas are a perfectly reasonable option. Just check the label for sodium, rinse them well, and you're ready to go. You can toss them into salads, you can simmer them with vegetables, you can roast them until crispy and snack on them. Or you can blend them with tahini, lemon juice, garlic, salt, and olive oil to make hummus, that silky, beloved dip from the Middle East that has conquered dinner tables worldwide. No chef skills required, no fancy equipment. An 8,000-year-old bean doesn't ask for much. And here's something else worth knowing. Chickpeas are part of a larger family of legumes that are getting renewed attention from global organizations. The United Nations has even designated a World Pulses Day to remind us how valuable these foods are. Why? Because the global food system is under pressure. Populations are growing. Farmland is shrinking. Livestock production carries heavy environmental costs. In that context, legumes offer something practical. Dried chickpeas don't need cold chains to travel or store. And as a legume, chickpeas can form partnerships with soil bacteria to fix some nitrogen from the air, which can benefit crop rotations. But, and this is key, that doesn't mean they need no fertilizer, and it doesn't mean every soil automatically improves. It's a potential resource, not a guarantee. Still, the bigger point stands. Chickpeas are both a legacy from the past and a possible tool for a more resilient future. They're not a silver bullet, but they are a meaningful option. So let's come back to that little bean in your palm. Light brown, pointy at one end, easy to ignore. It looks so ordinary, but inside it, there's 8,000 years of history. There's the hands of early farmers in the Neolithic Near East. There's the dust of trade routes, the steam of family kitchens in India, the sizzle of falafel frying in Middle Eastern markets, and the quiet satisfaction of a simple meal shared with people you love. The next time you scoop chickpeas into a stew, or dip warm bread into hummus, I hope you remember this. You're not just eating a snack. You're connecting to a story that spans continents and centuries. You're participating in a tradition that has nourished countless generations. And you're making a choice that's good for your body, good for your plate, and maybe even good for the planet. A tiny bean, a long journey, and a future that's still being written. Thank you.